Player Episode 8, Downtown Odds. Now, unfortunately, this is the episode before the last, and I'm hoping that there is some sort of resolution. I know that when the announcement happened, they were kind of filming the final episode, so I am hoping that they, even though it's obviously going to be rushed because the show has been canceled, I do hope that there's some sort of resolution in this next one. But this was definitely a cool episode leading up to the finale, and the way that they ended it is kind of what makes it seem like they at least got to do a rushed ending. So at least we're going to have it where, maybe Alex does actually find Ginny by the end because he is told by Cassandra, like, hey, what Mr. Johnson did, he lied to you, this is, this house. I was kind of confused, at the ending. I was surprised she went back there, and it was like, well, this place was abandoned. Like, she went there and there was tea, on the thing, and then the house was empty to begin with. I wouldn't have thought that they'd go back, but I guess at the same time, you do have to try, at least considering that's like their only lead. So it makes sense that they would try, but in my mind, I would have been like, there's no way in the world they'd be there, because even when the tea was there, they were either in the house and they took off because she took the tea off the stove, and so the whistle stopped. And, if it really was only one person there, or even if it was two people, it's like, okay, well, I know where that person just went or whatever. So they probably bolted from the house, and now it's just this random empty place. But there's possibly, a solution coming in the next episode. I really hope so. But this was, as usual, definitely a fun episode. The action was pretty cool. Sort of a whole Romeo and Juliet thing going on in the story. Very sad that Alex couldn't save the girl. I can't, of course, I'm terrible with the names. But it was kind of sad that he did that. We got to see a side of Alex that we'd never really seen. And that was him in the car, and he just, hit the brakes when he found out that she died. I believe her name was Amani. And so he finds out that she dies, and he just slams on the brake, and it's like he just wants to, kill this guy who, I swear that guy always plays a villain. It's like him, and then there's, this other guy who's currently the villain on Arrow. I swear they both play villains all the time. And this guy was actually on Arrow in the last season, and he was on Supernatural as a villain. He's just a villain all the time. He's one of those actors. It's like, you're going to be a bad guy again. Very different because he actually had a Russian accent. Normally he has, this creepy way of talking where it's, kind of slow, sort of raspy. So it was very different hearing him with, a Russian accent and everything. He was just speaking normally, kind of like I am. And any other time he has, this really slow... It's like the creepy version of Matthew McConaughey talking to you, so that's the best example I could give. But that's normally how he speaks when he plays villains. But he's a crappy person, and I kind of like how Alex was able to get one up on him, and he's able to kind of take this guy down. And so he sneaks into the facility and everything. He beats up a couple of people, which was really cool how he did that. And then he gets caught by the guy, and it's like, before you do that, you should, there isn't anything you want. And then he, pulls out his lighter, and he drops it and just blows up the whole thing, takes the guy down, and it's like, all right, now I got you, so I'm going to put you in the car, and we're going to stop this whole gang war, because this episode kind of had another game where, we saw one where Alex lost, and that was the Double Down episode, and I thought they were kind of doing that again, and then Mr. Johnson kind of gets real specific, it wasn't to prevent a gang war, it was to stop it. And when he said that, I was like, well, that's kind of cool. They can get really specific and meticulous about certain things, which they've done before, and they kind of pick and choose, but the wording definitely wasn't prevent. So he thought he failed, and then it's like, no, you still got time, we're still on the clock, let's ride this out. And the whole time Mr. Johnson is with the FBI agent, and they're having their little interrogation, as she put it. And so it's very interesting. They're just getting little bits of information. He talks about, of course, I know all of this about you. You know this, little bit of info about me, so here's something else. And then, of course, by the end, they have this nice little evening. And she ends it very tough, which I thought was cool. And she's like, I can spoil what's going to happen. The next time, it's like, I'm going to put you away for a very, very long time. And so she gets out, and she kind of goes about her way. I also loved when he was like, let's go for a drive. And she's just like, track my phone, and then she's like, everything's fine, just in case, and she just hangs up. I was like, once again, that was just really cool. She's being really smart, of course. This guy's involved clearly in some crazy super secret stuff, so I should probably have my phone tracked so I'm not ripped apart or something insane, and I just vanish into the night. So I love that moment. She's just like, hey, track my phone, and then that was pretty much it, that scene. But I like that sort of side story, and they're kind of getting a feel for each other much more than, of course, their introduction, where it's like, oh, let's say this and let's say that and blah blah blah. They have just a interrogation sort of dinner date type of thing, and seem nice and simple. They're just being fairly friendly for this interrogation, and it ends basically they kind of don't get anything out of each other. Of course, it's just like, well, I know this about you, you know this about me, really just personal stuff and not too much out of that. But it did give them their second sort of interaction, and it sucks, once again, that the show got canceled because I like their interaction and how Mr. Johnson does have kind of this equal at this point. Like, she's still far away from getting all the info that she needs, but she's still there, and it's like she still has, this information. She knows that this is the guy, and of course he knows like she's protected, and so he's trying to get at her, and she's trying to get at him. And I like that sort of balance because they're both kind of at a standstill, and they're just trying to figure out, what alleyway do I take? Like, where do I go to get the perfect piece of information to get this person, out of the way? So I like that they're constantly kind of, they're butting heads in the nicest way possible, I think. So I love that interaction. That's just another thing I'm going to miss from the show, but I really enjoy this sort of odd relationship that's kind of developed between these two characters. And it's very entertaining. It's like sort of the psychological side of the action, because you don't know what, based on what questions they ask, you don't really know what they're going to get out of each other, and we don't really know how many times they might end up randomly meeting, at the bar or whatever before things get really out of control. So I really enjoyed that in this episode. The main case itself was fairly interesting. It had a personal connection to Alex from the past, with him having saved this girl but not being able to save her father. So he kind of has ties with one side of the gang war because he saved this young girl, and so the gang kind of says like, all right, we give you a pass on that. And then, they kind of throw in the whole Romeo and Juliet thing, like they're trapped, and then of course she dies, and the guy is kind of just back with his family because he ends up killing the guy at the end, which I thought for sure Alex had done that because he was talking about, how she actually didn't mean anything and stuff like that. I thought Alex was the one that shot him because it's like, screw this. I thought that was a bad idea because I was like, holy crap, he just, killed this guy. And then, of course, this was kind of in the middle of him kind of turning them on Alex and him trying to figure out how to put it back on the guy who actually started things up. But then it ends up being the son, and of course he says it's for his brother. And, his father kind of finally recognizes him because he saw his son, his younger son, who was normally the guy who was the thinker, he saw him, become one of the actors. So I thought it was pretty, it wasn't even bittersweet, it was just sad. It was like she died, and, he suffered this loss. Of course it's going to be like a big secret. Well, I guess technically it's not a secret, but they didn't really go too far into it as to whether or not it was real or if things were a lie. But it was basically like, once the son came in, it was like, this guy, set up my brother, so that's why I killed him. That pretty much, solved everyone's issues. Like, oh, so it's true what Alex was saying, and this guy was just trying to get out of it. So, sad ending. It was just like, man, she died, and Alex, he couldn't save her. He couldn't really help the guy get out of town either, and it's like he was just, back into things. And everyone kind of just goes their separate ways, and it's like, man, that was a pretty sad ending. That kind of sucked. But it's definitely a fun case. I like the personal connection. The fact that they did make it fairly emotional. Like, we've had some fairly emotional stuff happening, like with the woman who tried to kill her husband. It didn't get as emotional as that because no one did actually die. It all ended up working out okay. But that was fairly emotional. Like, she was being beat by her husband and stuff like that, and she wanted this guy dead because she was having a kid. The second kid, really, because she, if I remember right, he did kind of force her to get an abortion before, or it was just because he hit her or was beating her, and that's why she lost the child. So we've had some emotional stuff, but this was like, and they of course played it up like they always do, like surgery and everything, and she didn't make it. So, excuse me, very a nice little emotional connection to the characters, even though we just met them in the episode, but it was enjoyable. I did like the ending. I'm really looking forward to whatever we're gonna end up getting in this finale. I'm going to say it a million times by the end of this week once I actually watch the episode, but naturally it does suck. that the show has been canceled. I recently found out another show I really like got canceled, which is Defiance. So I'm definitely going to be making a video where I'm angry about that later. But I'm looking forward to what we get out of this finale. I don't know. I mean, obviously, with everything they have, we aren't going to see what, everything that they wanted to do. Like, I don't know how they're going to do the storyline with the FBI agent and Cal kind of looking into the game. We don't know. We'll probably never get an answer as far as to who was targeting Mr. Johnson. I think the big thing we're going to get an answer to is Jenny. Like, I feel like that's at least something they could easily wrap up, is the stuff with Jenny. They could do the FBI thing and wrap that up where the FBI agent does get this bit of information. It could, because days have passed, they could easily do it like this happened, in between episodes. Boom, she has the information, and that's how she goes against the game. And then they have like one final game going, and it somehow leads them, to finding Jenny. I hope that's the case. I kind of don't think it is because I really don't know when they got the info for when the show was canceled. I just know that when I read the article that said they were canceled, it did say that the 9th episode was already being put into production and they were filming and everything. So I'm like, I really hope they got the news early enough. I mean, even if they got it during episode 8, that's not exactly early enough because then they'd have to cram everything into one episode and just wrap it up, which they could do. And like I said, no matter what, it's either going to be a normal episode, which would suck because it would just end with a natural cliffhanger for a canceled series, or it would be super rushed. I would, of course, I don't think anyone would prefer just a normal cliffhanger episode, even if it's rushed like crazy and it's like, oh, that's super convenient, and so is that. At least it would have an ending. I'd be totally fine with that. So I hope that's what we get. I really love this show personally. I just think it sucks that it got canceled. It's a great action show, and I know action isn't like the only thing for a series, but I thought it had an awesome premise. I know a lot of comments I read when I was looking it up is that people thought it was insanely convoluted and stuff in the beginning, which I don't see how. It's like, it's TV. Like, a bunch of stuff is fake, and people were saying like this game, like rich people gamble on whether or not one person can do something. That's like the simplest thing in the world to me. I was like, I don't see how people were confused by what was happening. It's a secret society game, which we've had a million times in television and movies. Secret society games like super rich, bad people place bets on lives, basically. It's like, that's happened a billion times before. And in this case, it's just they're betting on the life of one person and whether or not they can, do or not do whatever the random game is going to end up being. So I never understood that, why people were like, it was confusing at first. I'm like, how in the world was this even remotely confusing for people to understand? But either way, I've really enjoyed this series. I think it's been a great action show. Looking forward, like I said, to the next episode. Of course, I do want to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And unfortunately, because this will be the last episode coming up during this week, I want to know your speculations for what you guys think they're going to be able to do. Like I said, I personally don't know if they got the news early enough to write a script to flat out end the series, or if it's just going to be like a normal scripted episode. But if it was going to just wrap up, I want to know how you guys think they'd be able to do it. Like, what speculations do you have as far as how could they possibly wrap things up? Because the Jenny thing, I think that's easy enough. They just find some random clue. It leads to Jenny. We find out who the guy is. It'll probably end up being the guy from the first episode. It's this, and this. They'd have to put like all the answers into one episode, which would suck, of course. But with it being the finale, if since they're canceled, that's kind of what they'd have to do. So just all the answers, and then it's like, I got to get my wife out of here. Alex shoots in martial arts a bunch of people to death. Do that. FBI agent gets the random clue in between episodes, and then they're going after the game while Alex is. They'd really have to balance it weird, because it's like, okay, Cassandra and Alex are getting all the info towards finding Jenny, and then the FBI agent is getting info towards destroying the game, and then there would still be the game going on. It would have to be, because unless they just did an episode where the game wasn't happening, that could easily be a way to kind of do the finale where it's like, oh, there's no game today, and then that gives us time for both storylines, like FBI stuff and Jenny stuff. Boom, finale. So hopefully that's how it works out. They did end one thing, although I think this was just intentional. That's how it was going to be no matter what. But Cassandra and her relationship stuff, they ended that in this episode, but that was mostly because of people, coming after Mr. Johnson and possibly going after Cassandra and anyone that they're connected to. So they kind of ended that, but I think that's just how that was initially meant to be. And I thought that was an interesting part of the story as well. And it kind of sucked to see Cassandra be so hurt by that because of course she had to push the guy away because he wasn't gonna take that job, and it was like, oh, that sucks. And then you wouldn't expect that one, so she had to kind of hurt him, and then of course she hurt herself. And I mentioned this in I think it was the second episode he first showed up, and that guy used to play Jack on the show Revenge, and I was just like, man, that's depressing because Jack, that's kind of what happened in Revenge a lot. But that's what I was thinking of. But I'm looking forward to this next episode, like I said. But I do want to know what you guys thought about it and your speculations for what is unfortunately going to be an early last episode. And I think the replacement is the Jennifer Lopez cop show. It's that really sucks. Not, I don't hate Jennifer Lopez, and the show will probably be fine or whatever, but it's man, this is such a good show to me. But I want to know what you guys think, about this episode. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.